Easter egg, which I think we should incorporate. When you see in Bach's scores what look like harmonies, and he has them with staggered note heads, and also he has this one actually beamed as a separate quarter note. That's a good clue that he has something serious in mind rather than just a very nice celebratory ending. So we really want to hear the C sharp, D sharp, E sharp. And it's not just a cute thing. It's actually an answer to what we're doing at the beginning. Well, there's that. You know, it's squaring the circle. That's the same third that we have here. So there are a couple of things I want to suggest here. First of all, I think every one of these preludes and fugues is an etude for something. What he's after is not for technical prowess, but he's actually looking for a certain skill set having to do with a very limited number of elements, and how we can achieve a sense of variety in those elements, within those elements. And I do a lot of work on the virtual harpsichord, because I'm always asking the question, how would Bach have done this? Because you and I can talk all night about it. I want to get louder here, I want to get softer here. He was trying to write a set of pieces that would highlight, that would cultivate a sense of transparency in counterpoint. How does he do that when he has no sense of dynamic contrast available to him?
Yeah, so are you trying to mimic the harpsichord, or
Nope.
You're trying to use the piano?
What I'm trying to do is say that there are certain properties that the piano has that are quite wonderful and that we avail ourselves of at all times, mostly having to do with dynamic contrast. And on the harpsichord, dynamic contrast was not possible. Right. I'm not saying that we should eschew any sense of differentiation. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that we have to find other means of doing that. One of the ways of doing that is by looking at note heads as placeholders. In other words, sometimes a quarter note isn't a quarter note. Sometimes an eighth note isn't an eighth note. I kind of like this. I do. I like the idea of that C sharp starting out as just sort of a buoyant note and growing into something that actually becomes the main voice. And we don't have to just say, oh, he's playing here and now he's playing in the left hand. We can actually prepare that. And one of the things that's exciting me most of all these days is the idea of not just having a sense of hierarchy of here's the melody and here's the accompaniment, but how those two or three voices sometimes can interact and make each other sound really good. So one of the ways that I think is good is to look at the note heads in terms of just, this is where the notes fall on the time continuum, but it has nothing to do with how ultimate in the end you will play those notes in terms of length. Length is variable. Just as it's variable in terms of these long notes that I'm telling you to play with, I think it's variable in terms of the short notes. If we look at the idea of one of the aspects of the piano that we love is the idea of using pedal. Right? Because why play one note with three strings on it when you can play one note and have 300 strings resounding, right? But on the harpsichord, this was not available. Damper pedal was not available. So what would they do? If particularly when we have a sort of a chordal texture like this, it would definitely be an overholding situation. The other thing is that we can look at in terms of how this would be played on a violin is we would not be doing it in that's not okay. We have to figure out a way to cut our hand in half. On the violin, we would be actually, even if we were doing this in one bow, they would be adding more pressure when they went to the higher string. They would not be applying equal pressure to both notes. They would be picking out the melody note. So the only way we can experiment with this is to play them with separate hands. it's very difficult because we want to make our hands do the same thing. You know, I'm trying to make a crescendo here, so I'm using all the notes. No, you can't. We have to. Sometimes there are voices within voices, and these are aspects that can also be variable. So we can start this. Oh no! Well, now we get to my favorite part, which is agage, which is actually the definition of agage is really anything to having to do with expressivity, but it only has to do with expressivity as a rhythmic concept. The Oxford Dictionary doesn't say anything about crescendo, diminuendo, and so it's specifically what we could do on the harpsichord, and it has to do with, for instance, I don't think we should have a tempo imposed at the beginning. I don't want to say, oh, I liked Isaac's tempo, or oh, I wish it could be faster. I want us to really look at this in sort of scroll view, as you would if you were looking at this in finale program or Sibelius, that we are just aware of what is in front of us in this moment, and we have no idea what the tempo is. We're just following this wonderful little caress here, and then it starts growing, but it has to start from somewhere. Unchanging notes. My favorite underused musical notation is the parentheses. Put parentheses around every one of those non-moving 16ths. Don't do it now. But you know what I mean? It's just good. It's just good to have that as a visual cue, because otherwise we look at it as this motoric and very. Because I'm asking you to play this in a very fragile and opening way. But knowing full well that we're going to have this. You want to sing that flat out? I think you've earned it. Okay? And there's another, you get another payback in the fugue. Now, speaking of playing left hand against right hand, or two voices within one, here's a very specific thing in mind. These are not syncopations.
This part is 63.
Yes. Very much like our violin idea, we would be this string we would just be keeping ringing. We would not be doing it. No, there are several times in the well-tempered clavier, and sometimes several times within one piece of music, a prelude or a fugue, where we should really start thinking less in terms of line. Except, here's line, right? That's obvious, but it's not. It's the harmony. It's the top line of a harmonic changing motive. Just as here, this is. It's harmony. It's harmony. It's not a solo voice. We don't want to see Joshua Bell playing. Right?
I've gone back and forth on which notes
Exactly.
to bring back.
Exactly. But so look at it. So again, just a diminuendo on every bar. Think of it that way. Physically, and also the other thing we can do is engage with the agage. Now this is some pretty syncopated stuff. I think this is okay. But we have to do it in direct response to the left hand. We can't just put them in the right place. We have to have a sense of the feeling of what it would be like to play this with two different sections of the orchestra. It wouldn't go in time. There would be a little bit of agogic space, as you wish. We can use it variably. And here again, we all of a sudden we have our preference. That's come back. So make it singing. Don't let it be in this world of syncopation. So you see how right away I finish this, and then I'm doing an octave. Just because we can reach an octave doesn't mean that we shouldn't expend some effort or convey that effort to an audience. So I'm already taking some time. don't think it pays to just say, oh, it's just harmony, because this is really virtuosic stuff, right? But it's virtuosic because we have to really be very much in hand. We have to drive the train, not ride the train, in terms of the space that we intersperse to all of these figures. We've got plenty of time to build here, you know? And now, one of Bach's favorite things to do, and he hasn't indulged it at all in this piece, is his play with duple versus triple. And I'm really surprised that he held back this long, but he's in a 3/8 environment, and he hasn't done any jazz at all, no duple whatsoever. Guess what? We get the payoff. He actually beams it exactly that way. So that means not accenting so much, but actually a sense of space, a Gagic space between each of those triplets. There's no tempo here, Isaac. There is no tempo. The tempo all comes from the truth of the figures themselves. Getting that across.
Make sure that it sounds.
You want it just
and then do the.
Yes, absolutely. And even here, this is not one voice. This is a separate voice. So that has to be accommodated agogically. Now here, we don't have to do that short. But I like that buoyancy. I like sending it out. I like this idea of a roulade. Just sending it. I'd be happy just doing that. And so it's all of this, it's these six. But again, I'd like to have a more varied profile of this fugue figure. I like the roulade, and I like having some sense of space between those notes, so we don't have a sense of a continuum already existing. We never want to present the fugue subject. We want to discover the fugue subject. And each fugue subject is normally a combination of different elements or syllables. The most important thing we have to get to here is the agogic engagement with sequences. And again, it's a matter of using voices in accommodation and collaboration. So for instance here, because we have two voices in exactly the same register, within the scope of one hand, how do we differentiate those? We could differentiate them dynamically, but that would actually take away from, we would take away from the prominence of that voice. But we have to really, as I say, every voice exchange needs to be acknowledged and incorporated in some way. And I think the clearest way to incorporate that is the insertion of a little bit of agogic between the voice entrances. So if I was playing the right hand on its own, exaggeratedly, it would be. And also, you could see here, I've used my little parentheses idea because of this one I'm not playing so much. I'm planting that one. Again, that's parentheses. Do you hear how I'm doing a little bit of space before each one of those entrances? It has to be that way. There's a reason. Sorry, what do you want to say?
This entrance, ba ba da 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 da, and then this entrance, da da, right? There are these, right? Da, da, da,
Yes, that's one voice because the stems go up. That's another voice because the stems go down. We have to differentiate. So I'm making a little space there, a little space there, and a little space there.
Right.
Not just at the, you're absolutely right to point that out, because it's not just at the entrances of the voice, it's at every exchange of the voices. Every exchange needs to be taken into account. And so the fun thing about that is we don't have to worry about how we're playing the left hand. We just have to worry about making the left hand accommodate. I know. Well, so you don't have to think about it anymore. I think it's very difficult to figure out how to shape this. But if we're thinking more about accommodating these constant agogic shifts, we can accommodate that within the fabric of the left hand. And that takes all the guesswork out of it. So let me do this Also, be very careful about. Oh yeah, here. Just looking ahead. When we get to the recap, I like that. That's just me. I think there might be one manuscript that has that change, but I feel like, so it's not always right. I mean, I think he wouldn't be spinning his wheels. I mean, I really think it needs to recap that cross relation between the F double sharp and the F sharp, just as it does in the beginning. It's the same thing. It's literally the same thing. So I say do it. Now, again, we have two voices in the left hand, so we have to do the opposite. We have to accommodate, and really, it takes some work. So the end won't be so terribly. So the right hand can probably think about actually singing. But on the way up, there's a lot of time to be taken. And so guess who's going to be the benefit of that? The right hand. No, we can do that. Because we have time. We're not... We're up against the wall there, right? Allow the material, allow the content to determine everything. The pace, the dynamics, all of it. That wasn't just because I thought it would be cool to take some time on that dummy. It was because I was trying to accommodate the left-hand sequences and acknowledge each one of those voice exchanges. Here's the best one. Here's the one that's going to need the most because of these huge leaps. Because we have to take intonation into account. As if we were playing this on the cello, You hear what's going on? It's enormous space. Same thing in the right hand. Also, dotted notes. What we were talking about before. There are no syncopations. Those things that we call syncopations are invitation to a agogic. So we're not big on dotted notes in this fugue. And so when one appears, it's probably an invitation. That's a good place to do a nice solid arrival. And then, again, this is a beautiful example. Don't accent it, but you can weave between the lyric and the harmonic. They can inhabit the same voice. You hear how I all of a sudden go sort of transparent? That's and I keep telling you to cut back, but it's a lot easier to make a crescendo than it is to make an innuendo. And we get very caught up in all of the energy that is generated by just the sheer volume of notes, right? And the excitement of the harmonic motion. All of that contributes to our sense that we just want to maintain the sound. But the more we can instill transparency and constant calibration to each new harmonic textural environment, the better. And it sounds like I'm just making you cut back on everything, but we have our wonderful sort of after this sequence. Do you descending, and it's getting actually more relaxed rhythmically. I'm not making a ritardando, I'm just acknowledging the contour of the line, and I'm acknowledging the sequence moving down and so now we get our payback. Now we get to really ring. And then we get to recall, this is like a Broadway show. We get to, it's like a reprise. I mean, my God. And we have to have the same care. Not, that's not going to work. As it gets more intense, we don't have to get any louder, we just get broader and broader. What we do is something I call selective evaporation. So in other words, again, it's one of our things with, we're dealing with note heads as placeholders. We're saying that these chords, and they're not chords at all, they're combinations of voices, they're a community of voices. We will hold even though this looks like a chord, we're just going to make sure that we only hold that quarter note, right? Actually hold these a little bit longer if you want. They don't have to be so terribly short, but they have to be differentiated. We have to cut away, we have to fade away on those voices that are going to impede our plan, our goal of making these notes come out first and foremost. It's really easy if they're the last voice sounding, right? You can.
Would that ruin your?
No, it doesn't ruin anything. No, but he usually, gives you the sign if he wants it. But and I think the fact that he made such a point of, I think that becomes a more important thing. He does this often, and sometimes he doesn't really tell us exactly what he's doing. But this one is definitely, it's definitely.